This episode of On the Beat is brought to you by Ingles. Shop online with Ingles Curbside Pickup. New curbside stores opening every week. Please welcome Mike Griffith.
Well, everybody, Mike Griffith here, and welcome to Ingles on the Beat Monday night. And a lot to talk about. Spring football is underway. We're 1 week in. It's 3 practices in. Basketball season has been extended thanks to the NIT. Not sure how you feel about that, but I know Mike White is very excited. Georgia trying to gather some momentum in that sport. Baseball took some hits on the road, quite literally, at Kentucky. Softball may be a national championship contender, but couldn't quite finish the drill against Alabama this week. And then, of course, all the NFL dogs, all the Georgia players that performed at Pro Day. Want to go over what they did, what they didn't do, and who is ascending and who is descending stock-wise. But first off, let's talk about Georgia football. We had an opportunity to go out there on Thursday and watch the Georgia players practice. I catch a few passes, run a few routes. There was no 11-on-11 football work, but you kind of got to size some people up. And I'll share some of my early impressions. The first guy I looked for was the player that I think could be the most pivotal offseason acquisition in the SEC, and that is Mr. Etienne at running back for the Georgia Bulldogs, Trevor Etienne, Florida running back. And I doubled down on that concept when Kirby Smart went out of his way, was not asked. I asked him a question that had nothing to do with Etienne, and Kirby took it there and said that Trevor Etienne was one of the early leaders emerging. And, he said you don't have to be a guy that's been in the program to be a leader, especially when you're a guy like Etienne that's already been in the SEC, albeit at Florida. And Etienne's come in. We've done some work on him at DawgNation. I wrote a story about his appearance on Tate Ratledge's Real Talk podcast. That's proven to be a pretty colorful show. And heard Etienne say that he was here because he had a chance to start on a national championship contender. Obviously was not happy with being a backup at Florida. Anybody that watched the Gators last year, and I talked to their media members, I was at the Florida-Tennessee game. They don't win that game. The Gators do not win that game in the Swamp without Trevor Etienne and his home run hitting in that game. I think he went for about 172 yards. Amazing player, a guy that I think has instant impact, adds instant juice, electricity, looks like a 1,000-yard rusher. When Tate Ratledge had him on his show, he said, we're going to get you 200. I mean, that's a pretty big words from an offensive line. We're going to get you a 200-yard game. When is the last back to go for 200 yards at Georgia? How would you like to see that this season? But I'll say this, Etienne, albeit the fastest guy, I think quickest, certainly watching the drill work, he looks a little small. And the reason I say that, not to pick on him, but to accentuate the need for Georgia to manage him. I mean, think about this. For Georgia to win a national championship, they have to play a minimum, 16 games? Is that right? Because you play 12 in the regular season, and then you play the SEC championship game, that's 13, and then you get a bye in the 12-team tournament, but you still got to win 3 games. That's a long season. And if you by chance lose the SEC championship game, as Georgia did in 2021 when they won the first of their 2 national titles, you're looking at a 17-game season. That means you got to manage these guys, okay? This is the SEC. It's not the Big Ten. It's not the Big 12. It's not the Pac-12. It's not the ACC, where you have some of these cream puffs at the bottom of the league. Even your cream puff. Remember the game Brock Bowers got hurt in? Yeah. Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt led that game. That was the worst team in the league. And they took out Georgia's best player in that game. And they were physical. And that was an ugly, scrappy game. More ugly and scrappier than even normal. It wasn't a pushover, right? And so when you have physical games like that every single week, I think part of what makes Kirby so special, and there's many things, but I think his roster management is what sets him apart. I think the guy is obviously a brilliant talent evaluator. All you got to do is look at 3-star Eric Stokes, ends up being a first-round pick. 3-star Ladd McConkey, recognized on the verge of first round, early second round. Kirby finds these guys. Jordan Davis, the overweight project in Charlotte, turns into Outland Trophy winner, first-round pick in Georgia. He finds the talent, but then he also manages it. And I looked at how he managed Kenny McIntosh in 2022. Early on, you didn't see a lot of carries from Kenny McIntosh. right? And it was, well, why isn't Kenny getting, well, because they were saving him. Kenny was catching the ball, but Kirby recognized that he had to get his starting tailback to the finish line, right? Gone are the days of 4 deep with Zamir and James and Kenny and Kendall and Dejan. 5 deep, right? 5 stacked. They were stacked. Management not quite as big a factor. Last year certainly was a factor. We find out Dejan Edwards played half the year with a sprained MCL. We saw Kendall Milton slow out of the gate, slowed by injuries, hamstring early on, sprained knee. Then Kendall finishes fast, right? You saw Branson Robinson out for the year, knee injury. Andrew Paul coming back from knee injury, was not 100% early on. You were down to Cash Jones, moving Dylan Bell, wide receiver, running back. So how you manage your roster is huge, huge. And sometimes it works out great in the case of how Kirby's managed the running backs, and sometimes it doesn't in terms of Georgia's inability to come up with clutch receivers down the stretch. They really needed Anthony Evans to be ready in that SEC championship game, hindsight being 2020. He was not ready when Ladd was slowed and Brock was injured. And unfortunately, Georgia, no touchdown passes. Carson Beck, unable to get it done against Alabama in the SEC title game, the passing game petering out at that pivotal time of year. So let's getting it back on topic, roster management. So watch for ETN to be used, I don't know if I'd say sparingly, but judiciously early in the season. And that's key because you got a road game at Kentucky and you got a road game at Alabama in the month of September. And oh, by the way, you open with Clemson. So it's going to be very important for these other running backs to be ready to play and perform. Roderick Robinson talking about you, the Thunderback at 240 to ETN's Lightning. Got to have him ready. Where will Branson Robinson be? Kirby made it sound at the press conference last week that Branson could be close to 100% over the summer in training. That would be a monumental lift if Branson Robinson is ready to go and can be productive in the backfield. I don't hear enough about Andrew Paul. Going to keep a close eye on him this spring. Is this a guy that's going to get back in the fold? He looked so good before his injury. And then the incoming freshman, Nate Frazier. What can he give you? I think this running back position is pivotal to the offense because I don't think the passing game is going to be as good. I don't think Carson Beck's numbers are going to be as efficient. Now, I think there'll still be some volume. I think Carson will still throw for big numbers. And if Georgia goes undefeated, he's got a shot at winning the Heisman Trophy. No doubt about it. But I don't know that I have the same faith in the receivers that I do the running backs just because of all the newness. I mean, you have, other than Dominic Lovett coming back with his 54 catches, you got to go all the way down. Ra Thomas had 23, right? He had the foot injury. Still not 100%. Ra still not 100%. So where does Carson look? You say Dylan Bell, 29 catches. Pretty good receiver, okay? He backed up Ladd over there. But at the X, this is where I think Colby Young, the incoming transfer from Miami, makes an impact. Now, this is a guy with some big-time hops. This is a guy that can go up and get it. He can go up and win that 50-50 ball, make it an 80-20 ball. But can he separate? Can he beat press coverage? And can he block? Now, I got an eye full of him, and he is tall and long and reminded me a little bit of George Pickens. But I don't know about the physicality. This is going to be my question. How physical can Colby Young play? You know Kirby wants demands physical receivers on the perimeter, or you're just going to be a roll guy like Arian Smith, who, by the way, only had 8 catches for 153 yards. Is that one of the guys you're counting on? The guy that jumped out at me in the receiver ranks was Anthony Evans. And I mentioned him earlier. There were some balls thrown, and the way that Evans adjusted on those passes and the way his hands the guy just seems to have some hands. He seems to have an innate ability to adjust on the ball. He looked extremely fluid. And as I just watched him going through these drills and these workouts, I'm thinking, this guy looks like he could be special. This could be the breakout player. Maybe it's Colby Young, the incoming player. London Humphreys, the transfer from Vanderbilt. A lot of people say, oh, Ladd McConkey. Well, listen, yes, they're both white. But that's where it stops, okay? Humphreys is more like an Arian Smith. He's a straight line speed guy. He doesn't have the wiggle Ladd does. So whenever you hear that comparison, roll your eyes and shrug. And if it's somebody you like, correct them so they don't sound silly anymore. And if somebody you don't like, let them keep saying it because if the comparison does not hold water. Humphreys is not Ladd McConkey. make sure you understand that. He is a straight line speed guy. He does have upside. He can be very effective, but you're doing the kid a disservice if you try to put him in Ladd's category. Ladd is special. Ladd has been special. I don't see a Ladd McConkey in the group. Maybe Anthony Evans can be that guy. I don't know about his juice. I don't know about his wiggle. I know he's got great hands. I'm trying to think who he would remind me of off the top of my head. Just an incredibly acrobatic, good hands, electrifying receiver. And if I can come up with a comp before the end of the show, I will. If not, then Anthony can be Anthony, and just look forward to seeing this guy on the field. But beyond those obvious challenges of trying to get on the same page with new receivers or guys that you haven't gone with a lot, I just wonder how much does Carson invest working out with his receivers? I almost wonder if, like, the spring break trip and everybody saw everything on social media, the jets, the dinners, the Lamborghini. If it's like, okay, now that's over. That's all over now. Now it's time for football. Now it's all football in your off summer, stick around, throwing set. Like, that's where I wonder about will that same level of focus and intensity be there? I remember JT Daniels taking a group of wide receivers out to California on their spring break, right? He didn't just go party. He took half the receiving core with him, if not more, right? To get that extra work. Is there still going to be that extra, right? And that's going to be the determining factor to me, whether or not Georgia can win a championship. I know Georgia's going to be good. I know Georgia's going to win 12 games, 11, 12 games for sure. A really good team, plays really hard. But to get that extra, to get over that hump, to be that team that wins that 4-team playoff, I think you got to have a little bit more. I think Michigan had it. And I'm one of the people that looked at the whole, Spygate thing and said, oh my God, that is over the top, whatever. But you know what? Everything, they were all in. They were all in together. They made – Alabama didn't. And I upset Alabama fans, not intentionally. But as I even as I look at the projected draft, and I would see 3 or 4 Alabama guys in the first half of the draft, and so many people fell into this, Nick Saban love fest narrative. Oh, wow, this team really grew as the year went on. I look at it like, no, this team really stunk early. This team wasn't prepared as they should have been. You're telling me that Jalen Milroe was a third-year quarterback and they still didn't know what he could do when they played Texas in the third game of the season or second game of the season? I was there for that, folks. DawgNation sent me there. We were looking at Alabama early on. We had a good idea that this was going to be the team that Georgia was going to go through. And I went and covered that Alabama-Texas game, and I came back and said, what in the world is going on? Nick Saban is not on top of his game, and he was not on top of his game, and Alabama was not prepared for the start of the season. And why did that matter to Georgia? Because that Texas win ultimately kept Georgia out of the playoff. That's the case I would make. I think Georgia would have gotten the 4th slot ahead of Texas, even though they Florida State. Even though they ranked Florida State ahead of Georgia, I don't know if push would have come to shove if they would have tried to make that case that Florida State without their starting quarterback would have got in ahead of Georgia. As it stood, it didn't matter. It was a moot point. Texas was in because Texas beat Alabama head-to-head. They were ahead of Bama in the pecking order. I digress. Alabama was not prepared at the beginning of last season. They didn't do the extra, all right, as they should have been. They were not as prepared as they should have been. Michigan was, and that's why Michigan ultimately won the national title. Washington and Kalen DeBoer, how much of it was DeBoer? How much of it was Michael Penix? I'm biased, and I'm biased because I sat in Michael Penix's living room during the recruitment when Tennessee pulled their scholarship, and I watched Michael get re-recruited, and I stayed in touch with his family, and I followed his career, and I can tell you this guy is special. He is special, and maybe DeBoer is too, but I'm more inclined to give the credit for Washington's offense to Michael Penix with some of those throws he made. DeBoer can coach him up. He can X and O, but Penix had Michael Jordan-like throws that I just don't know if Jalen Milroe can replicate. Milroe has more mobility. I think he's going to be more involved in the run game. But I think the people that are asking Kalen DeBoer to replicate his success at Alabama, I think he's going to be hard-pressed to do that. He only has 2 assistant coaches that traveled with him over there. And so, yes, we keep an eye on Alabama. They're on the Georgia schedule. I'm keeping an eye on Clemson as well. I want to see if Clemson has the firepower because I know they have the gumption. I know they have the desire. I know Dabo well. I covered Dabo at Alabama in the 90s. I still stay in touch with Woody McCorvey, his right-hand man at Clemson, and I know what that program is up against. This is a pivotal time. Clemson is fighting to stay relevant. The world is shifting around them. Could they ultimately end up in the SEC? Look, Clemson needs this game. This is desperation. Backs to the wall. Don't overlook Clemson. Yes, Georgia should win. They should win. But I'm telling you, don't overlook this Clemson game. Just like you're not going to overlook Kentucky. That's Brock Vandagriff on the other side of the ball. That's Jamon Dumas-Johnson on the other side of the ball. These are leaders. These are clubhouse leaders at Georgia that are going against their teammates. You know they're going to be primed at home against the Georgia Bulldogs. That is why Georgia has to attack this offseason. Every minute, every workout, there needs to be that hunger, that eat off the floor. Kirby talks about it. But is it really still happening? Or is NIL undermining that? I think it's possible both. I think NIL does undermine that mentality. I think it's possible for teams to overcome that and stay hungry and stay humble and work together and work like an underdog, even though you're the overdog, the big dog that Georgia is, but still hold the underdog mentality. And I know this is all like sounding like coach speak, but truly this is the mentality of programs and teams that win it all. It takes the chip on the shoulder. And that's what I need to see from Carson Beck because I don't see it. I see a guy saying, well, I got to find a way to stay motivated after last year was a good year. I don't hear a guy going, we didn't win the championship last year. It was a bad year. I got work to. I don't hear that. I hear, after I had such a good year, I got to find a way to stay motivated. Really? That's the mentality? I hear, I'm working on my confidence, staying confident. You're working on your confidence. I'm hearing Kirby Smart saying he's not a very assertive young man. What? Wait a minute. Choose your red flag. Carson is incredibly talented. Carson is an NFL quarterback, but we don't know if he's a championship quarterback because talent does not guarantee championships. And you've seen it over and over and over again in the NFL. I could give you a long list of talented NFL quarterbacks that never won a championship. And the same with college quarterbacks. Talented, but not championship caliber. And that is what Carson Beck has to prove. Not his talents, not that he deserves it, not that he's a good kid. Is he, what does Kirby Smart say? You're either elite or you're not. Code for championship material or not championship material. We don't know. Jury's out. Talent is there. Supporting cast, this is where I say the running game's important because I think Georgia has got to run the ball effectively to set up the pass. I'm not convinced there's enough of an arsenal in the pass game to set up the run, okay? There's no Brock Bowers. Brock's not going to be there to wave his magic wand and come up with all these catches in the fourth quarter and beat Auburn or catch the ball that should have been intercepted against Florida that bounces off three hands and he catches it or make the matrix move on a pass thrown. He's not going to be there to bail out these quarterbacks anymore. He's just not. He was magic for the quarterback rating. He was magic. Oh, the pass game was so good. No, Brock Bowers was so good. He made it look good. If you would have seen how many passes should not have been caught, it was ridiculous. You saw the catches that he made behind him, over his head, in traffic, didn't drop passes, yards after the catch. He made the Georgia passing game look better than it really was. They don't have that now. Delp is good, but he's not Hall of Famer good. He's very good, but he's not a Hall of Famer generational good. Dominic Lovett, he was okay. He's an SEC starter, but he wasn't dynamic like Luther Burden over there at Missouri, right? I know you tried to get that guy, Georgia. You didn't get Luther. You got Dominic Lovett. You settled for the next best guy, and he looked like the next best guy. He was okay. But when you needed Lovett in the SEC title game, he wasn't there to lift you. He couldn't get it done. He couldn't bring you that element. You needed that explosive plays. Oh, my gosh. He turned the whole game around. No, he didn't. And Bowers was hurt, and so was Ladd. They didn't have that. So who's the game changer? ETN. That's your game changer. And you need him to be there at the end of the year. All right, now I want to recognize our sponsor, Ingles. Every Monday night Ingles brings you this program. They've been with us from the start. Only answers, no questions with Ingles. Let's take a moment. Recognize our sponsor, Ingles. We'll be back with segment 2 right after this.
Did you know Ingles only sells USDA choice and prime cuts of meat? Maybe it's time to reward yourself. Our butchers cut all our meat fresh in the store every day. Grass-fed, organic, you name it. Not only that, we'll even cut it to order just the way you like it. And we grind meat fresh in the store multiple times a day. It's all in the bag. That's the best meat in town for the best folks in town. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
Welcome back to the program. Appreciate Ingles. Appreciate everything they do for us. Segment 1, we really went big on offense, right? I got carried away there. That happens when I talk about Georgia football. Every Monday night I come unplugged, right? Like I've got this sheet of like, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this. And then sometimes I just get on a rant and I realize, oh my gosh, this really is that important. This is even more important than I realized when I wrote it down. This is like going to decide the whole season. This is going to decide where you spend your holidays and if you're happy. And then the whole butterfly effect. If you're happy, you make other people happy. And the Georgia economy is that much better off. Could go on and on. But Georgia football, it does matter, right? It really does matter to the point. I want to get into a couple questions on the defense. I'm going to talk about basketball here in a second because Georgia basketball getting in the NIT is important. And I know it's not cool to talk about Georgia basketball because, they've been losers so long. Well, guess what? They're trying to do something about it. We'll get to that in just a second. Jake Pope, the safety from Alabama. I wonder, Kirby typically doesn't bring guys in unless he's going to try to help them start. Is Jake Pope a starter, the Alabama transfer? I don't know that. Is he just another guy? You got to have a lot of DBs. That's another thing. Georgia plays a ton of DBs, different situations. Guys are at different levels. Don't forget, you have another transfer portal window coming up after the spring. Does Kirby know something we don't know? So I want to zoom in on Jake Pope. I want to watch him. I want to keep up with him. I want to ask Kirby about him. Who is the safety next to Malachi Starks? Malachi's out for the spring. You know, that shoulder injury still there, mental rep still plugged in, whatever. Not hitting anybody with the shoulder. Is it Dan Jackson? Is it David Daniels? Because here's my concern. These guys weren't good enough to start before. Are they suddenly good enough to start, or you just not have anybody better now? Right. And this is where losing that Alabama transfer to Ohio State, you're like, oh, man, if only. Well, this is why Georgia went big on Caleb Downs. So who's going to be that guy? Is it Aguero? Is he going to move? We know he trained at Start. Is Aguero ready for this jump? When he came in, I look at his grades, though, on PFF, and I go, oh, wow. Maybe not as quick of a transition as we thought. Where's he at with that? Could KJ Bolden jump into the mix? What about Corey Thomas? I wonder about all these things. I wonder these questions. Kyron Jones, I think he's working at Start. I heard Kirby mention his name on the speaker Thursday. Kirby doesn't do anything by accident, by the way. He knows the media is there when he throws out Kyron Jones' name. That tells me the head coach is stepping on the gas. That's a good sign, by the way, for Kyron Jones. When Kirby's mentioning your name and you're getting called out, that is a good sign that he is looking and watching you. Not a good sign that you got called out for doing something wrong, but a good sign the head coach is watching you closely. That tells you he is counting on you to get better, and he is insisting that you get better, and that is for a reason. So not a bad thing when you hear your name on the call out. All the Georgia players have funny stories about it. And, you know, the guys we ask about it, the guys going to the NFL. Because the guys going to the NFL all got called out all the time on the way to the NFL, which should tell you something about the players that Kirby Smart is watching close enough to see if they went to the right drill and moved fast enough while they were jogging there. Not walking, because you do not walk. In fact, I feel motivated to jog out of the practice. When I say it's time for the media to go, I don't want to walk. I want to jog a little bit because I feel like Kirby might start yelling at the media outside of the press conferences, which, yeah, he hadn't been as bad about that as of late. Every now and then he'll get a little testy with you. I like that, though. Like I said, I don't go to the zoo to watch the tiger or the bear sleep. I like seeing Kirby on the pro. He's been a little nice this spring. Kind of makes me wonder, like, what's going on here? You're a little too nice these days, Coach Smart. What's going on with that? You got to get him a little bit more fired up. Maybe we need – now, granted, it was the beginning of spring press conference before the first practice. The best Kirby press conferences, I'm going to give you a little trick here. You can look this up on our YouTube channel, are the Tuesday night practices. Mondays are good. He answers questions. I think he wears like professional shoes and is dressed like he's going to an office or whatever. Give me the Kirby with the visor like this on Tuesday night, where you don't even see his eyes, you just see shadows, and he's got the practice gear on, and his sentences are clipped and short and direct. He is in game mode. I want game mode Kirby press conferences over post-game Kirby, although post-game Kirby can be entertaining. Monday Kirby is informative, but give me Tuesday night practice Kirby, game mode Kirby. I like that. That is my favorite Kirby Smart interview, Tuesday nights. Maybe this Tuesday, I don't think it's a night. It's an afternoon. It's a noon. But he'll at least be coming off of the first week of practice. We'll see what kind of mode Kirby's in Tuesday night. But I want to know about Jake Pope, the safety. I want to know what's going on back there. And what they'll tell you, well, everybody learns two positions. So they'll sort it out. They'll tell you they'll get the best combination out there. We really won't know. We really won't know. Now, he'll know, and the portal will talk. After spring drills, the portal will talk. We'll find out who was in the mix and who wasn't, because you'll probably see one or two of those guys leave. That's just my guess. The Michael Williams move to the Jack, you saw this. Is this an experiment? Is this real? Is this Michael saying I want to play somewhere where I can get numbers, or I'm going to transfer, or is this really what's best for the team? Like, I don't know. I can't separate it. I know that for all the edges you recruited, you lost a couple to the portal. You're moving a guy that started there, Chaz Chambliss. Right now, apparently he's moved out. Gabe Harris has moved over to end where Michael played and looked great his first year. So where is Samuel Mpemba and all this? Like, I don't see. I don't know. I want to say I know Ingram's Dawkins is out. I think he's got a foot. He will probably be your starting end if Michael stays at the Jack. But who else steps up? And then D tackle, right? Remember last year when Kirby said not sure if there's any train wreckers or havoc makers, and Georgia ended up sinking all the way to number 18 in run defense. The head coach knew, right? Do they have train wreckers and havoc makers? If Warren Brinson and Nazir Stackhouse, is this last year been enough, this offseason been enough for them to recognize they weren't good enough last year to win a championship? They came back for another year. You heard Kirby say Tuesday, don't want guys coming back just to come back. And he threw some names out there. And those two were on there anyway, these guys and Tate and, come back to win a championship. You're not coming back just to come back. You're coming back to win a title. Remember last year when Kirby singled out JDJ and Smile Munden and said, you guys aren't practicing like you did a year ago. Remember that? I wonder if we're going to see any or hear any of that. Because, listen, if the head coach has got a problem, he'll deal with it on the field. He'll call on a microphone. When he takes it into the media, that is amping it up, okay? And I don't know if Kirby's going to use that tool or not. If he needs to, he will if he needs to. He will tell the world that some – listen, and by the way, if you walk by a Georgia practice, the world can hear what he is saying. I mean, he does not hide anything. Kirby is pretty direct with this. Xavier McLeod, a transfer from South Carolina. This guy looks like the package. Now, and then you read the comments. Oh, well, I heard this about him and I heard that. I don't know what you heard about South Carolina, but I know he's at Georgia now. And I know that if he's going to make it at Georgia, then he's going to be a certain type of player. We're going to find out if this guy can transit. Obviously, Kirby believes in him or he wouldn't have brought him in. But this guy has the look of a Georgia player. Now, can he perform like a Georgia player? Like, at Jordan Big Baby Hall, this guy came in as a 5-star and, talk about him, does like the NIL shows, paid shows, it needs to learn to be coached. And like, wait a minute. Jordan Big Baby Hall, you are, what is Kirby? Either a leader or you're not. Like, Jordan Davis may have struggled when he first came in, but midway through his freshman year, you saw he was an impact guy. I didn't see that from Jordan Hall. Is he a 5-star in name only, or is this guy going to give you the performance consistently? Because this is year 2. And in year 2, Jordan Davis was wrecking people. And I don't know if Jordan Hall's going to wreck people. He's not Jalen Carter, I can tell you that. Jalen Carter came in here like Godzilla, destroying people everywhere. Practices, games. He's like, well, I don't know, but 88, this guy is a wrecking machine. I mean, he from day one. Jordan Hall's not that. Can he be that? I don't know. Did he need to grow? Did he need to mature? Did he need to have an epiphany? I'm not sure. Physically, is he Jalen Carter physically? Looks pretty good. Had the same kind of rating, right? But does he become that guy? And Georgia fans, for 2 or 3 years, you saw one guy step into another guy's shoes, and you, oh, well, of course. But then last year it didn't happen at defensive tackle. When it was time for next man up, your defensive tackles went down. I mean, they were. You dropped off. There's no nice way to say it. And my goodness, you had 2 first-round picks. So maybe it was a given that you would drop. But was it a given? Right, because then you went to Jalen Carter. Right, you dropped off from Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt to Jalen Carter, and there's a little bit of what was there though. Did you look at how Jalen Carter played? But then last year was okay. Now you're still good. You're still better than 90% of the teams in the country. You're still better than 13 out of 14 teams in the SEC. But guess what? The team that was better than you beat you in the SEC title game. So there's not much margin for error at Georgia, just to be clear. Let's talk basketball real quick before we get to the third segment. So people say, oh, I don't want to hear about basketball. Oh, basketball, bad. Georgia won title in 90 years in regular season. Listen, progress was made. You caught a break. And it's okay. It's okay to catch a break in sports because Lord knows you've had some breaks go against you. All you got to do is look at 2nd and 26 going against you, right? All you got to do is look at Bowers and McConkey injury going. You've had injuries that have cost you titles in football. You've had injuries that have cost you other sports. It's okay to get a break and be on the right side of things. Georgia basketball caught a break, and here's how. This is what you need to know about the NIT. I'm not going to get into all the details, but all you need to know is this. They redid how they picked the NIT, and they said the first 4 teams out of the NCAA tournament are going to be the top 4 seeds in the 32-team NIT. Wake Forest is one of those. Team Georgia beat earlier this year. That's relevant because if Georgia wins Tuesday night at home, they'll play Wake Forest, the team they beat earlier in the year and one of the top 4 seeds. So after you take those top 4 seeds, first teams out, you're going to take the top 2 remaining teams in the Power 5 leagues and then add the Big East. They're like the equivalent of a Power 5 in basketball. So now you've got 12 more teams plus the top 4, and there's your top 16. And then the rest of the field, the bottom 16, are the next teams up in these net rankings. Now, you want to Google net? Go for it. Google net rankings. Teams in quadrant 1, 2, 3. I'm not a big fan of net, but you got to have some ranking system that everybody agrees on, and net has been it. I kind of like the RPI, but it's net. So we looked at the SEC and we said, okay, 8 teams got in. That was why it was big. A&M got that win over Kentucky. A&M comes off the bubble, gets in. That's your 8th team in the SEC tournament. Now we drop down. Who's the next highest team in net? So we take the top 2 teams from the league to get in the NIT. The next team up is Ole Miss. But Ole Miss with Chris Bird says, you know what? We're not playing any postseason tournaments. We got timing is everything. Timing's not good for us. We got some players dealing with personnel issues. So Ole Miss says we're opting out. We're not going NIT. Not where the program wants to be, needs to be at this time for the program with the players that they have. LSU next up, 94 net. LSU goes in, and then there's Georgia at 100. You're better than Arkansas. You finished ahead of Arkansas. Okay, Arkansas basketball is kind of a big deal. If you've never been to a basketball game at Arkansas, then you may not realize it. Arkansas basketball is a big deal. It's not Arkansas track. They win at everything because they got the indoor track. But basketball, big deal. And they had their first, I believe, sub-500 year since 2010. So Georgia, the benefactor of that. You had someone, you beat Arkansas. I think you split with Arkansas. But you beat them here in Athens. You got some good wins here. You went 3-0 against the ACC. Georgia won 10 games in a row at one point this season. Your margin in the SEC went from -13 to -3. You've got 3 freshmen starting for you, including all SEC freshman Silas Demery Jr. Mike White has some guys he wants to keep. Freshman Silas Demery Jr., freshman sharpshooter Blue Kane. This kid's fearless and shoots the 3. And Dylan James is 6'9", emerging forward. Mike wants to keep these guys. All right. And by playing in the NIT, because the basketball portal window opened up today, Monday. It did. Runs through May 1st. Keep the kids engaged. Give them some more memories. Build some karma, some chemistry. Build some momentum into next year. It's not going to be easier playing Xavier. Xavier's a real deal team, okay? They can kick you into the rafters if you don't show up on Tuesday night. Trust me, that is a basketball school, and they take it very seriously. You're not going to hear their people. They wanted to be in the NCAA tournament, but they're coming down. They better beat Georgia. they're expecting to beat a team like Georgia. Like Georgia, yes, this is the kind of game Xavier went and won at Georgetown recently. So Xavier is business for Xavier. The self-respect, save some degree of self-respectability. You lose to Georgia, you go home shamed if you're Xavier, because that is a big-time basketball school. They're feisty. They play hard, and they got some talent. So Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, Stegman Coliseum. Students get in free. It will be interesting to see how many fans fill up Stegman. They've been great. They've been behind Mike White in Georgia all year long. I think they're going to need them. I think they're going to need fans to beat Xavier. That would put them probably against Wake in round 2 on the road, I would guess, against Wake Forest. And Wake plays Appalachian State in their opening game. So it's big for basketball because it's big for momentum. Now I want to take a short break. When I come back, I'm going to go into what's hot, what's cold, probably get into a little baseball, probably get into a little softball, probably get into a little NFL draft rankings of the players. And that is a segment that is sponsored by Anytime Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, and we appreciate them as well. Let's listen to their message right now, and we'll be back with who's hot and who's not.
To make sure your family stays comfortable all year long, our family of trained comfort specialists are available anytime to service or repair your system. Or it may be time to replace your old units with a new Trane HVAC system.
We are a locally owned family business, and we carefully select the technicians who we send into your home.
At Anytime Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, we are large enough to handle all of your HVAC and plumbing needs,
but small enough to care.
Call today to take advantage of our 3-visit annual maintenance plan.
All right. Normally we start out with what's hot. Well, what's hot was not hot last weekend. Baseball was smoking hot. They won 16 out of their first 17 games. They go to Kentucky. A lot of people foaming at the mouth. A lot of those Dog fans foaming at the mouth saying, you know what? Kennesaw State took 2 out of 3 at Kentucky last weekend. So surely Georgia will do that too, right? Wrong. Kentucky sweeps the Bulldogs. And not only do they sweep them, they knock their pitching off the mound. Georgia loses to Kentucky 16-10 Friday, 9-3 on Saturday, 12-2 in 7 innings on Sunday. Wes Johnson, first-year coach, says the ball's not going to bounce your way every day, and it definitely didn't this weekend. Charlie Condon, amazing, still National Player of the Year candidate. Went into last weekend leading the country with 13 home runs in 17 games, hitting .569. Well, Kentucky, they weren't just throwing around him. They were throwing at him. He got hit twice by pitches. He got walked 5 times. So that's 7 at-bats where he got a free pass, okay? So the on-base percentage is plenty healthy, but just 1 for 8 hitting with 3 RBI, all right? So on-base-wise, let's see here. Let's do the math. 5, 7, 8 out of 15. He's still getting on base more than half the time, but they're not going to let Charlie beat him. Charlie is going to have a tough time with SEC pitching. He's going to need help from teammates to make it really hard to pitch around him. This is going to be a thing. Other teams are not going to throw the ball down the middle against your best player. It's an age-old axiom. Never let the other team's best player beat you, i.e., pitch around Charlie Condon. And it's going to be up to Georgia to get enough offense and enough other players that can hurt you. The teams are like, gosh, we just can't give up that free pass because the next guy will do this or the next guy will do that. Now, Georgia will play Wofford. I believe that game was moved up to 4 p.m. on Tuesday. And then mighty Alabama comes to town next weekend, Friday, 6 p.m., Saturday noon, Sunday 1 at Foley Field. Tied a top 10 team according to some polls. Softball, red hot, still red hot. Softball took 2 out of 3 from Alabama. This close to handing Alabama softball their first sweep since 2013. This close to sweeping Alabama for the first time in Georgia history. Bases loaded, bottom of the 7th, more than 2,000 people. Jaden Fields up. Man, you want Jaden Fields up. She's killer. She's clutch. She's beaten Oklahoma before. She gets a hit against everybody. Nothing phases Jaden Fields. But Bama pitcher got her high-rise ball and struck her out with the bases loaded. But the game was not lost in the Jaden Fields at bat. Jaden battled. She started out 0 for 2 in that count and worked it to a full count. So I give her credit because she put herself in position to make a play like a veteran does. The game was lost on a misplayed ball. a veteran player, didn't make a play. You got to make the play. A sinking liner. Look, this is a play the 12 and under girls make in travel ball. Didn't get scored in air because softball scoring is still, pretty generous to girls, it seems like. Shouldn't be, because this is an elite group, okay? This Georgia softball team is as good as any in the country. They know it. I'm going to tell you, they should be playing in the national championship. Not only should this Georgia team make the Women's College World Series, provided everybody stays healthy, I want to make that clear, but this team should be playing Oklahoma for the national championship this year. They're that good. Their bats, their resiliency, their experience. They've added another pitcher, this Lily Backus girl from North Carolina, gives them a third arm to go with Madison Kripix and Shelby Walters. So now they've got a 3-pitcher rotation. I mean, and I coached my daughters in travel ball, so I watch the sport, and I know greatness, and these girls are amazing. Jada Kearney, Sarah Mosley, Sydney Kuma, Sydney Shambly. Even their shortstop, Ellie Armstead, kind of had a light bat. She's hitting key home runs now. Lindy Ray Davis. I mean, I know their names. These girls are superstars. Literally, this team is filled with superstars, and they let Bama off the hook with poor defensive play and untimely hitting. They got to be better than that. And we'd say the same thing about a Georgia Kirby Smart team if they lost a tough regular season game as they did in 2020 to Florida, right? Every now and then the best team doesn't always win. But when you're Georgia, when you're trying to do what Tony Baldwin is trying to do, and they're on the verge of this facility upgrade getting happen this offseason, Georgia is trying to go to the top of the SEC in softball. They're not just trying to be good, folks. This state produces so much talent. Georgia softball should be the best in the SEC. California produces a ton of softball talent. It has to do with youth programs, players coming up, getting good coach. Georgia's right there. No reason why Georgia shouldn't be winning SEC. It's been 2005 since Georgia's won an SEC regular season title. That is way, way, way overdue. It's hard to say they've underachieved. I'm not going to say that. But what I'm going to say is Coach Tony Baldwin has a team right now that can win it all, and he knows it. Now, how does he keep those young women motivated every week? I don't know. They've got a great chemistry. They play together. They support one another. They get good crowd support, but they really let an opportunity slide. If they could have swept Alabama, that would have sent a huge message. As it was, taking 2 out of 3 against the number 14 team, that's kind of a push. It was an opportunity to do something special. They didn't do it. They didn't differentiate. We'll see what they do this week. My guess would be they'll respond favorably because this is a veteran group that puts in the work. And listen, for these young women to come back, they didn't come back just to come back. They came back to win the SEC and make a statement. And they will be definitely worth watching. You'll see them on TV. You should check them out. I think their attendance is still free there amazingly. I don't know how because other programs charge, but at Georgia, it's still free to go to a softball game. Great family entertainment. Team plays hard. And Coach Tony Baldwin really just doing a knockout job. You've seen him on my show already. By the way, Wes Johnson was going to be on this week. I asked Wes to come back next week and do the show with me next week because obviously he's moving some things around with the pitching. And listen, he wants to get it right. They're going to play Bama at home next weekend. We'll get him on next week. But that was me asking Wes to do that. I know he's watching film and all that kind of stuff. And that is how. Now, I want to talk real quick NFL draft. Ladd McConkey, I was talking to an former NFL scout that I talked to a lot. He said the fact that Ladd McConkey went through all these drills at Pro Day, doing everything to compete with the NFL on hand, the NFL is noticing this because there's other receivers who may be ahead of Ladd in the pecking order that aren't doing all their stuff. They're not competing at the combine. They're not running the 40. They're not doing their private workout to the NFL likes because what they're seeing from Ladd McConkey is a guy that works hard, is a guy that's going to be coachable. If he's willing to do this right now, he will be willing to do this in camp. He's not going to be one of the holdout guys, okay? I'm not his agent. Maybe the agent's like, wait a minute, we'll decide that. We're going to negotiate. I'm just telling you, Ladd ain't a holdout guy. Ladd wants to play ball. And the NFL teams see that, okay? They want that. They want a guy that works like Ladd McConkey. Now, yeah, he's talented. He's fast. He's quick and all that stuff. But you put all that stuff with a guy with the right attitude, that's why he drew comparisons to Cooper Kupp. That's why. That's how he went from 165 pounds that nobody other than Vanderbilt and the SEC offered to being a superstar at Georgia and being on the verge of being a friend. This, Georgia, is your Cinderella story. This is your ambassador. Okay, this is the guy when you tell the story of Kirby Smart and Georgia football, this is the guy you point to. Graduated, community figure, NFL impact player. You can't say enough good things about Ladd McConkey. Just can't. Brock Bowers, listen, Brock wanted to go. Brock, I remember when Kirby told the story about teasing Brock Bowers the day Malachi Starks covered him, and he could see Brock twitching and moving around on the sideline until he was angry and ornery. I got to see that because that was Brock at Pro Day. He's standing around twitching. He's talking. It was killing him. It was killing him not to be on the field, but he's got a hamstring. And it's like, Brock, this isn't a game. It's not something you got to play through for anybody. You got a hamstring, dude. You got to sit it out. Don't re-injure yourself. This is draft stock. The team's not going to lose. I know you could go, but don't take any chances. You don't have to. You're the number one tight end in the draft. No questions asked. And if you didn't want to work out at all, you could pull that off. But no, he's like, no, I'm going to work out. So I think April 10th, he's holding a private workout. He wants to compete so cotton picking bad. And you could just tell he was ornery. He did his media interviews. He was really good, as always. He even said he might challenge Ladd McConkey to a race, which was hilarious because Ladd's like, well, he's got plenty of NIL money. So bring it on. Those guys having some fun with each other. You don't normally hear any trash, but you know, Brock's got a little confidence. There's a couple times when he kind of bowed up when we said, hey, Jamon Dumas-Johnson said he can cover you or something like that. And he was like, okay, yeah, bring it on. So Brock Bowers has got that. You just don't really see it or hear it. But we got to see and hear a little bit of it at Pro Day because he was a little fired up. He couldn't go. So Bowers, a little edgy that he wasn't able to work out. Looking forward to his workout. I think, like I said, first week of April. I think Amarius Mims, who had to twanged his hamstring at the combine, running that 5.07, big Amarius, smiling, telling me how much he loved football. I said, man, you smile a lot. Is it just that he said, I got a lot to be blessed for? And I just, man, that's great, right? Isn't it great that a guy smiles and realizes that he's blessed? And boy, Amarius just seems to have that nature off the field. On the field, I got a feeling he's probably a little bit different. Probably so. Like road grader different, like run everybody over different. A lot of projections right now for Amarius going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but Ladd's stock on the up. Kamari Lassiter, interesting story here. One of the reporters from The Athletic apparently had his 40 time wrong and put it out at like 4.61. ESPN came back, said it's 4.51. They like Kamari. The reason that's important is Kamari is a fringe first rounder. I think he'll probably go second. I think they're a little worried about the frame. He's about 186. I think you want the guy to be just a little bit heavier, maybe a little bit taller. I think he's a shade under 6 feet tall. Press corner guy, rare, hard to find. Kirby talked big on him. I think his workout was such at Georgia Pro Day. I think he had a good Pro Day. I think he moved up in the order. Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint caught everything that he could. Gunnar Stockton was throwing. As you know, Carson Beck opted out, did not want to throw to the teammates that day. Carson was there to watch. Probably told by his NFL people, hey, you're one of the top 2 quarterbacks next year. You know, let's not give NFL people any fodder or, you know, stand on the sidelines and watch. And he did. So Gunnar Stockton went out there. I thought he did good work. Gunnar actually was a little better touch than Carson on the passes into the flats to running backs. I think that's an area of Carson's game that needs to get better probably is that short pass, especially this year with ETN. But Gunnar looked good throwing that short ball. Gunnar looked pretty good on the outs. Missed Ladd on a crossing route. Threw a perfect ball to Ladd on a fly. But Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, I thought he did everything he was supposed to be. Caught the ball. Different reports on his 40s, 4.63. Some people 4.7. I think Marcus is going to have a hard time just because of the speed. And he's not the biggest guy. You know, watching him play and just maul people blocking. In my mind, he's 215, 220. He's really not. He's not that heavy. He just plays big and he plays strong. And some NFL team is going to get lucky because they're going to look through that and say, you know what? Forget the weight that's listed. Look at how this guy plays. Look at how physical he plays. And the balls they do throw to him, he catches. He doesn't drop the ball. So hoping Marcus can stick around that 5th round, 4th, 5th round. A little worried he may slide to the 6th. Don't want to say his stock's slipping. Zion Logue, Dejon Edwards, 2 other guys. Could they slip to free agents? Potentially. But they're both ball players. So I think they'll make the team. The guy whose stock continues to go on the rise, I think, is Tyke Smith. Now, he's underrated, but Tyke went out there and ran a 4.46. That wasn't supposed to happen. And then you look at the production, you say interceptions and tackles leaders on Georgia. Of course, Javon Bullard will be the first safety off the board. Of course he will. Maybe late second, third. But will Tyke move into 4th or 5th round? So Cedric Van Pran is Cedric Van Pran. All the intangibles, the leadership, maybe not as athletic as the top 2 centers. Could he be the 3rd center? Could he go 3rd round? Hope so. Kendall Milton looked good, ran a better 40 time, knocked a 10th off on a slower track. Georgia indoor facility slower than Indy. I think Kendall looked good, playing the part. But at the end of the day, running backs are not as valued as they once were. And Kendall has had an injury history. And there's nothing he can do to prove any otherwise. The second half of the season, he stayed healthy. You saw him with the knee brace off. The confidence is there. You see a guy with a very high ceiling, but I think teams are going to be reluctant to use a 1st or a 2nd day pick on a guy with an injury history at that position. Now, he could shock the heck out. I mean, if he stays healthy now, somebody could get a steal. This is another guy that could be a steal. So an exciting time for the Georgia players. I think they all tested well. I think they are who they are. There is a certain bump that players get by being Georgia football players and coming out of Kirby Smart's program. The NFL teams know they've already competed day in and day out against NFL players. They understand what championship football means, and they understand the priority that football has and needs to have in their life. To be able to work to get through the Georgia program is an award of itself. You should have like a service ribbon. Like I served in the 82nd, like a service ribbon. It says I was in, I made it, right? Because 82nd Airborne. Well, Georgia ought to have one of those. I mean, in the classroom, they give you the degree. But like the football team ought to give you something like, hey, you made it. You made it through. You didn't transfer out. You didn't quit. You didn't go home because it's tough. And you hear all the time that Georgia isn't for everybody, and it is so true. And Kirby, I'll close on this. Kirby's not lowering the standard. He's raising it. And this is how I know. I was walking out of practice on Tuesday. I was right outside the gate. And Kirby's saying, all you prospects that are here looking at your phone, don't be looking at your phone. You're here to watch practice. You're telling on yourself. You're telling me about yourself. You'd rather read your Twitter feed than watch my practice. He said, we got the eye in the sky. And he's telling these prospects. Like, he's going to look and see who's looking at their phone. Like, there's thousands of kids, prospects, that want to come to Georgia on a visit and be a part of this. And if you're going to be in those gates, man, you better be paying attention, because that's what Kirby signed up for. He don't want a kid that's not going to pay attention. If you're not paying attention now, you ain't going to pay attention then. And maybe he lost a couple guys. Maybe there's a couple like, oh, man, I don't need this. Good. Kirby don't want you then. Kirby wants dudes tuned in and focused. And he is not going to compromise that for NIL or anybody's talent level. He ain't doing it, because that's not how you stay on the top. And he knows what it takes, because he's keeping Georgia there. And that's why they've got to have some leaders step up on this team. Some of those key names we talked about earlier at key positions, those guys have to be at a razor's edge. If they're going to lead an elite squad, then they got to play the part. And that is the challenge for Georgia football in the offseason. Appreciate everybody joining me. It's been a crazy, fun, dynamic program. Every day, 10 a.m., Brandon Adams, DawgNation Daily. I know you check that out. Brandon is the voice of the fan. He will tell you what the fans think. He will tell you very clearly. Jeff Santel on Wednesday night before the hedges. Jeff with some very interesting thoughts on prospects. I can't share them, but you're going to want to hear Jeff on Wednesday night and see if you get the same read that I did when Jeff was talking about certain prospects that maybe or maybe not high on Georgia list. It's going to be very interesting to hear Jeff Wednesday night before the hedges. And then Thursday night, Connor and Kaylee Manziel do a program as well. Interesting things. I think they did a series on some Georgia awards. I voted for them last year, and top players, positions, things like that. So all sorts of fun. I'll be on with Brandon Adams on Wednesday on DawgNation Daily. That's my day when I get to be Brandon's featured guest. And then, of course, you can find me on Twitter at Mike Griffith 32. Oftentimes, if I'm on the SEC network in the off season, a little here and there. in season every Thursday, but I'll let you know at my Twitter account at Mike Griffith 32. Everybody.